Gary Oldman. It's like Gary Oldman's third movie. He plays Sid Vicious.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and Gary Oldman's he's a master,
Gary
man.
Oldman's amazing, dude.
Yeah.
I like him in Batman.
This was the run where he
I
was
do like
doing like
Captain, what's his name? Captain, in
the
Batman, what does he play?
uh, commissioner.
Gordon. Yeah, Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah,
Commissioner Gordon. There we go.
Commissioner Gordon.
He's
Man, I
great.
liked him in True Romance. Yeah, but he was only in it for like a minute and 17
Did
seconds.
you know he was a
Learned
good
that
one?
from Benny Hill, you know, that comedian from back in the day. And Benny Hill was a great character actor. A lot of people don't know that's my influence comes from that, from Benny Hill. Because when I was a little boy, my grandmother would watch that. Do you remember that show, Benny Hill? You might be too young. Yeah.
I remember they used to play like the clip like early in the morning with
Mhm.
the music.
Oh, that's Benny Hinn.
Oh,
Okay. Benny Hill is a British comedian who had a syndicated show, and they would show it Saturdays at 10:30, and it was like risque.
I think I've seen it, but I can't put my foot on it.
Yeah, it was
I'm
very,
serious.
very
I'm
risque,
serious.
but this dude could do an Australian accent, a Brooklyn. He made great character actor, man. And I'm pretty sure as a little boy, which I thought was strange, that my grandma she didn't speak English, but she loved watching that show, man. And it was this British type humor, and she thought it was just the funniest thing she'd ever seen. And she let me watch it, and there's no way you should let a 9-year-old watch that, you know. But she let me, man, and I think that was my first foray into like you can actually change the way you look and the way you sound.
impressions and stuff when you
Yeah,
were a kid.
yeah. What I would do is if like whatever my grandma would find funny that Benny Hill was doing, he would do a character like an Australian character that worked with animals, and in the skit, of course, the animals always attacked him, you know. So, but he would try to remain calm, right? Like, but obviously, like the tiger was eating him, but he'd still like try to remain, like that he wasn't afraid, and that would, like characters like that would crack my grandmother up. So, yeah, I would repeat that. You know, I guess the best Australian accent a little Mexican boy could do. Microphone check. What's up? Oh man, ooh, becoming a poet, man. Okay, so I was 9 years old, and my mom had married this guy who's in the radio station business, and so anytime like wrestling or truck pull or like tractor pull, anything like that came to town, we would get tickets because he would advertise on the radio station, right? So one day wrestlers came, and there were the Von Erichs, and that back in the day they were like they were like rock stars, and he asked me, do you want to meet them? And I said, of course. And one of the specifications that my stepdad had with working at the radio station is that he wanted a trailer directly behind the radio station so he could keep an eye on it, always be there 24/7. But back then, radio stations were outside the city limits, so I had no friends, right? So when these wrestlers came, I heard them on the radio, and they started fighting while they were being interviewed. So I ran from the trailer and I ran to the radio station. I went in the booth and they were gone. And I made my way down the hall, and in the lobby, I looked in there and these wrestlers were sitting next to each other, like having coffee and smoking cigarettes. But like I was 9. My mind couldn't, I'm like, wait a minute, like I was supposed to be fighting. Why aren't y'all fighting? So when I went to the wrestling that night, and I had like right ringside, could shake hands with the wrestler, but I really wasn't psyched about it because it was like all a lie. So at 9, like having this existential, thing happen to you. So I was at a babysitter's house and she was listening to Prince, and I'm 9, but I liked it. And then the first record I bought was Purple Rain, and the sleeve of Purple Rain is all poetry. It's Prince's lyrics. I started listening to that record, and those words I didn't know what they meant. I'm 9 years old, man. But the music, it really moved me, and the things that he was saying, because he would talk about sensuality, and he would talk about God being a her, and that was very different from what I was taught, and it really expanded my mind because I wasn't little, but I wasn't big just yet, and he's a poet, and I picked it up from there, and then by the time I was 10 or 11, I was writing my own things. No, man, my mom didn't like it, man. I started to change, like wearing her shirts and things like that. And she came home one day and I was listening to Darling Nikki. And she was putting the clothes up in my drawer and, she started listening to the words to that song. And it's a pretty intense song. And she's like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like, "It's Prince." Like my voice had changed. Like I was trying to emulate him. But those lyrics got in my head, so that was the first poetry for me. No, I didn't even know that was something you could be. Plus, because nobody my age was listening to that. I'll give you an example. So after schools, me and some friends, and we had these girls that wanted to be our girlfriends, and we're like waiting for the bus, and we're like hiding behind the bushes, making out and things like that. And this young girl, her name was Mariana. She said, "Do you want to be with me?" And I told her like the most Prince thing you could possibly say. She says, "Do you want to be with me?" And I'm 9, man. I said, "I am you." And she didn't know how to take that. She went and told everybody that I wanted to be a girl, that I wanted to dress up like a girl, that I wanted to be her in that sense. Yeah. Yeah, not in the sense of like, we're the same, like you just whoosh, right over her head.
It's such a unique like role model to have like at such a young age.
Oh, it was perfect.
It probably shaped you very differently than the average kid.
Oh, it did, because Prince was always about sensuality, the, just that stuff underneath, not so much surface, and he got me just at the right time, because I wasn't little boy, but I wasn't big boy either, but he got my spirit and my soul first, and then everything else after that. Of course, the things that he was talking about, I mean, I couldn't feel those things because I was a kid. But as I got older, I started to realize, oh, that's what he was talking about. I think it was just something I started doing, and I didn't know that it was something that a lot of people didn't do. I started writing a lot, and when I got to 10th grade, we would go in class, and this is how old I am. They would write on the chalkboard a subject. And I think it was just a way for the teacher to get everybody to chill, His name was Mr. Howard. So every day, the subject I would write, and then one day he asked me to stay after class. And he said, "Hey, I've been reading the things you've been writing." He says, "You should read this." And he gave me a book of short stories by Edgar Allan Poe. They were detective stories. And the cool thing about Poe was that he was the first writer to, like, get in the mind state of the villain. Used to we always just had this perspective of the villain, only one, but Poe was like telling you what he was thinking and how he was feeling, and that was the first time that we had been invited in somebody's mind. In fact, Poe was recognized as our first genius by Baudelaire, or those poets, over there. They were really fascinated with him. And when he handed me that book, I started reading it, and of course it affected my writing. Yeah. From then, he said, "Well, will you read this out loud? Will you read your work out loud?" And I said, "Sure." And then he suggested I take theater.
Oh wow! Because of the way you read it, it
Mhm.
was just like, oh, I can really feel it,
Mm-hmm.
not just hear the words. Because a lot of writers, they don't have that performance gene.
Right.
You, it was like right away.
Yes. And then from there I did theater, and then it was over after that.
He said it was over.
Mm-hmm.
You fell in love with theater right away?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I was an athlete. Like I played baseball, basketball, football, and I was really good at those things. So when I got into theater, there were that theater group of kids that didn't play sports, who really didn't know, like, what are you doing here? Like, it's not enough that you do all those other things. Now you're gonna come infringe on us.
You
So
know, you were taking their space,
yes,
their
yes,
territory.
yes. So that first year was, they ran me through the ringer, man.
Yeah. But
But
after a while, I'm sure they look good.
yeah, well, I stuck it out. You know, as much as they tried to embarrass me and try to get me to quit, they would always just make fun of me, or I made myself look like a fool. But I enjoyed it, and I rolled with it. And after a while, they were like, okay, you
Well,
know.
how did they try to make you look like a fool?
Okay, my first play, they were working the lights, and I'm playing a grandson who finds like a pot of gold or something. There's leprechauns in it. It's ridiculous, like some fantasy. And the pot of gold is supposed to be here, and they do the spotlight to where the pot of gold is. But when I said the pot of gold here, they did the spotlight to the other side. So, you know, I had to do this motion of like the pot of gold over here, that's over there. You know, and when you're in theater and you don't miss a beat, with film it's different. You know, you get a retake. With theater, you sink or swim, and that's when you know if you got the.
So right away, when that happened, you just rolled it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what they were like. All right, you're about it. You didn't give up. You didn't freeze, and you must really like this. So yeah, I was just totally enamored with it.
Yeah.
It was so different from what I was used to, because when you're an athlete, you know, you're the way people accept you is different. You know, it's only if you win, or you know, only if you score your touchdown or whatever.
Right.
And theater was this team effort, but it was just a little different. And it was very it was unlike football. Very very much so.
So once you got into theater, acting, that type of stuff, you stopped being in sports, or you kind of did both?
No, I did both. And by my senior year, most of the football team was coming to my plays.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because they would make fun of me too. You know, so I had dealt with that, and then with these guys,
It really brought like people together.
it did.
Like brought worlds together. Really.
It did. So this is important. There was a UIL play that came up, and in the theater class, me, Yesenia, and I were the only Mexicanos in theater. The rest were not. And so the UIL play came up, and it usually went to the same kids, right? They were teachers' kids. And so that year, I was like, why don't we try out for it? It was my senior year. And I convinced Yesenia to try out with me. She was really hesitant at first. She'd been in theater longer. In hindsight, I know why she was that way. But I didn't know. So I asked her, hey, you know, let's try out for it. And you try out in front of your peers, you know. Yeah, so the regular people that usually got it, they win, and of course they did well. They were great technical actors. But Yesenia and I brought something different. You know, we had that technical, but we had some authenticity, because we weren't as well versed as they were, you know. And it's almost like we didn't know the mistakes that, you know, that we made, like. But so we tried out for that UIL play, and the class was like, "Oh man, you guys got it. You guys nailed it." Even the regular actors that usually got it, they were like, "You got it, you got it." So then the teachers call us outside, and as we're standing outside, Miss Cordell, she said, "Wow, I was very impressed. I wasn't expecting that. That was really good." And then the other teacher, Mr. Wilkerson, he goes, "Yes, I was very impressed." And Miss Cordell said, "But," and then I, like, through my peripheral, I could see Yesenia's head go straight down the people in the play were from New England, right? So she's telling us this. She goes, but the people in the play, they're from New England. You know. And I said, yeah, Massachusetts, yeah. She said, so they talk a little different. And I'm thinking, well, we can get an accent coach and, you know. And then she said, and they look a little different. And I'm like, well, we can wear makeup, right, and costumes. Like, it was totally oblivious to me. And that was because I was an athlete. And when you're an athlete, that doesn't matter as long as you win, right? But this was different. And I was totally oblivious to it. That she meant the color of our skin, right? And that's why Yesenia had the attitude that she had. That's why she was always in the background. And I remember her telling me, like, I told you I didn't want to. She never acted again. And she was a brilliant actress, man. Brilliant actress, man.